The laboratory's alarms blared, bathing everything in pulsing red light. Zora's four-fingered hands trembled as she desperately tried to download her research data. The Kraxan Empire's soldiers were moments away from breaking down the door. Come on, she muttered, her large, violet eyes fixed on the progress bar. A thunderous boom shook the room as the door began to buckle under the assault. With a triumphant beep, the data transfer completed. Zora yanked the memory crystal free and swallowed it, wincing as it slid down her throat. Her species biology would keep it safe, for now. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Armored figures poured through the opening, weapons trained on the lone Nixilian scientist. "Hands up, traitor," the lead soldier barked. "You're under arrest for crimes against the Empire." Zora raised her slender arms, knowing resistance was futile. As they roughly cuffed her wrists, she took one last look at her life's work, groundbreaking research on clean energy that could revolutionize the galaxy. Now it would be weaponized by the Kraxans, used to subjugate even more worlds. The next few days passed in a blur of interrogations and threats. Zora revealed nothing, enduring their crude attempts at information extraction. Finally, she was thrown into a cramped cell aboard a massive prison ship. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species were crammed into the vessel's holds. Many were political prisoners like herself, scientists and leaders who had opposed Kraxan rule. Others were common criminals or captured soldiers from worlds that had dared to resist the Empire's expansion. Zora huddled in a corner, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her pale blue skin was mottled with bruises, her normally lustrous head tendrils limp and dull. She had no idea where they were taking her, but she knew it wouldn't be pleasant. Days blended together as the ship lumbered through space. The prisoners were fed meager rations and allowed brief periods of exercise in the halls. During one such outing, Zora's sensitive hearing picked up a conversation between two guards. "Taking this batch to Hadros Station," one was saying. "Heard they need more slaves for the dilithium mines." Zora's heart sank. Hadros was infamous throughout the galaxy, a hellish mining world where prisoners were worked to death extracting fuel for the Empire's warships. Few survived more than a year in its harsh conditions. As she was herded back to her cell, Zora caught sight of an alien she hadn't noticed before. He was tall and oddly shaped, with pinkish skin and a thatch of dark fur atop his head. A human, she realized. She'd heard of their species but never seen one in person. The human met her gaze and gave a slight nod. There was a glint of something in his eyes. Determination? Hope? Whatever it was, it stirred something in Zora. For the first time since her capture, she felt a flicker of defiance. That night, as she lay sleepless on her hard bunk, Zora made a decision. She would not meekly accept her fate. Somehow, some way, she would escape. And as she got the chance, she'd make the Kraxans pay for every world they'd conquered, every life they'd ruined. Little did she know, events were already in motion that would change not just her fate, but the future of the entire galaxy. Jack Hawthorne had seen a lot in his years as an independent trader, but the misery aboard the Kraxan prison ship turned his stomach. He'd infiltrated the vessel by posing as a supply contractor, hoping to gather intel for the human resistance. What he found was even worse than the rumors. As he moved through the corridors, ostensibly checking inventory, Jack's eyes darted constantly, searching for weaknesses in the ship's security. That's when he spotted her, a Nixilian woman, battered but unbroken. There was a fire in her eyes that caught his attention. Over the next few days, Jack made it his mission to learn more about the alien prisoner. He discovered her name was Zora, a brilliant scientist who'd been arrested for refusing to weaponize her research. Perfect, he thought. She could be a valuable asset to the resistance, if he could get her out. Jack's opportunity came sooner than expected. As he was leaving the ship after his final inspection, alarms began blaring. The Kraxans had discovered his true identity. "Sif spit," Jack muttered, ducking into a service corridor. He had to move fast. Pulling out a concealed blaster, he made his way to the prisoner blocks. Zara was jolted awake by the alarms and commotion. Confused prisoners pressed against the force fields of their cells, trying to see what was happening. Suddenly, the fields flickered and died. "Move, everyone out," a voice shouted. Zara recognized the human she'd seen earlier, now armed and waving prisoners toward the exit. "You, Nexilian," he called out. "Come with me if you want to live." Zara hesitated only a moment before sprinting after him. They raced through the ship, alarms howling and confused shouting echoing from all directions. "I'm Jack," the human panted as they ran. "Got a ship docked in Bay 3. We just need tow." He was cut off as a squad of Kraxan soldiers rounded the corner ahead, raising their weapons. "Get down," Jack yelled, shoving Zara behind a bulkhead. He returned fire, his blaster spitting bolts of energy down the corridor. Zara cowered, heart pounding, as Jack exchanged fire with the soldiers. Despite the chaos, she couldn't help but be impressed by the human's skill and bravery. "Okay, go." Jack grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. They sprinted past the fallen Kraxans, the acrid smell of ozone and burning plasteel filling the air. They burst into the docking bay, alarms still blaring. Jack led her to a battered but serviceable-looking ship. "Get in," he shouted, already racing up the ramp. Zara followed, ducking as blaster fire erupted behind them. The ship's engines roared to life as she strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat. Jack's fingers flew over the controls. With a teeth-rattling roar, the ship blasted out of the bay, narrowly missing the closing blast doors. "Hang on," Jack growled. "This is gonna get bumpy." The stars blurred into lines as they jumped to hyperspace, leaving the prison ship far behind. Zara slumped in her seat, the adrenaline rush fading into exhaustion and disbelief. "Why?" she started, her universal translator struggling to find the right words. "Why did you save me?" Jack turned to her, a crooked grin on his face. "Let's just say I've got a thing for underdogs. Besides, the Resistance could use someone with your brains." Zara's eyes widened. "Resistance? Against the Kraxan Empire? But how?" "It's a long story," Jack said, leaning back in his chair. "And we've got a long flight ahead of us. Why don't you tell me about that research of yours, and I'll fill you in on what we humans have been up to out here in the big bad galaxy." As the ship hurtled through hyperspace, Zara felt a mix of fear and excitement. She was free, yes, but now she was caught up in something far bigger than herself. Whatever lay ahead, she knew her life would never be the same. The next few weeks were a blur of narrow escapes and tense hyperspace jumps. Jack's ship, which he'd affectionately dubbed the Lucky Star, proved to be as nimble and resilient as its captain. They hopscotched across the sector, always one step ahead of Kraxan pursuit. Zara spent much of her time in the ship's small lab, working to recreate her research from memory. She explained to Jack how her clean energy designs could be adapted to enhance ship engines, weapons, and shields. The human whistled in appreciation. "No wonder the Kraxans wanted to get their claws on this," he said. "With tech like that, we might actually stand a chance against them." As they traveled, Jack taught Zara about the loosely organized human resistance. Humanity had been late to join the galactic community, their homeworld only recently achieving faster-than-light travel. The Kraxans had assumed they'd be easy prey. They were wrong. Humans proved to be resourceful, adaptable, and fiercely independent. When the Kraxan fleet arrived to annex Earth, they found a unified planet armed with cobbled-together alien tech and a stubborn refusal to submit. The resulting battle was so costly that the Kraxans were forced to retreat and regroup. "We've been a thorn in their side ever since," Jack said proudly. "Hit-and-run attacks, sabotage, helping other species resist. It's not much, but it's a start." Zara was impressed by the human spirit, but skeptical of their chances. "The Empire controls thousands of worlds," she pointed out. "How can you hope to defeat them?" Jack's eyes twinkled. "One world at a time, Doc. One world at a time." Their conversation was interrupted by a proximity alarm. A Kraxan patrol had picked up their trail. Sith spit, Jack swore, racing to the cockpit. Hang on back there. The Lucky Star dove and weaved, green energy bolts from the Kraxan ship sizzling past. Jack's piloting skills were put to the test as he threaded through an asteroid field, using the space rocks for cover. We can't keep running forever, Zara said, gripping her seat as the ship shuddered under near misses. Got any better ideas? Jack shot back, his face tight with concentration. Zara's mind raced. She glanced at the sensor readouts, then at her partially completed designs. A crazy idea began to form. Maybe, she said, but you're not going to like it. What followed was a frantic race against time. As Jack kept them one step ahead of the Kraxans, Zara cobbled together a makeshift device from spare parts and elements of her experimental tech. She attached it to the ship's power core, ignoring Jack's worried glances. Whatever you're doing back there, he called out, do it fast. The Kraxan ships were closing in, their weapons finding their range. The Lucky Star rocked under direct hits, shields failing. Now or never, Doc. Zara took a deep breath and activated her jury-rigged device. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's engines flared with impossible brightness. Space itself seemed to twist around them. When Zara's vision cleared, the Kraxan ships were gone. So was the asteroid field. In fact, nothing looked familiar at all. Doc. Jack's voice was unusually subdued. Where exactly are we? Zara checked the readouts, her heart's pounding. If my calculations are correct, we've jumped halfway across the galaxy. Jack let out a low whistle. Well, I'd say we lost our tail. As the implications of what they'd just done sank in, Zara felt a mix of elation and terror. They'd escaped, yes, but they were now far beyond any charted space, with no idea what awaited them. So, Jack said, a hint of his usual grin returning, what other surprises have you got up your sleeve? Zara managed a weak smile. Let's hope we don't need to find out. As the Lucky Star drifted in unknown space, its two occupants shared a moment of uncertain silence. They'd survived against all odds. But their journey, Zara realized, was only just beginning. After days of cautious exploration, Jack and Zara stumbled upon an inhabited world. The planet's surface was a patchwork of lush forests and sparkling oceans, with no signs of advanced technology visible from orbit. Looks promising, Jack said, guiding the Lucky Star into the atmosphere. Let's hope the locals are friendly. As they approached the surface, Zara spotted something that made her gasp. Jack, look, in that clearing. A collection of ships was nestled in a forest glade, their designs a mishmash of different alien technologies. At the center stood a structure that was unmistakably of human origin. Jack's face broke into a wide grin. Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we found ourselves a little piece of home. They sat down on the outskirts of the makeshift settlement. As they exited the ship, a group of armed individuals approached, a mix of humans and various alien species. Hold it right there, a gruff voice called out. A scarred human woman stepped forward, leveling a blaster at them. Identify yourselves. Jack raised his hands slowly. Easy there. Name's Jack Hawthorne. This here's Zara. We're friends. The woman's eyes narrowed. Hawthorne, the smuggler. I prefer independent trader, Jack said with a wink. The woman lowered her weapon, shaking her head in disbelief. I'll be damned. We thought you were dead. As tension eased, introductions were made. The settlement's leader was Sarah Chen, a former Earth military officer who'd established this hidden outpost for resistance fighters and refugees. We call it Haven, Sarah explained as she led them on a tour. It's not much, but it's free from Kraxan control. The settlement was a hive of activity. Humans worked alongside various alien species, repairing ships, tending crops, and training for combat. Zara was amazed by the spirit of cooperation. How did you find this place? She asked. Sarah's expression turned grim. Luck and sacrifice. We lost a lot of good people getting here, but it's given us a base to strike back at the Kraxans. Over the next few days, Jack and Zara shared their story with the Haven leadership. Zara's breakthrough in propulsion technology caused a stir of excitement. With this, Sarah said, poring over Zara's diagrams, we could hit Kraxan targets anywhere in the galaxy and be gone before they knew what happened. Plans were quickly drawn up to adapt the tech for Haven's ships. Zara threw herself into the work, grateful to be using her knowledge to fight back against her former captors. Jack, meanwhile, found himself drawn into strategy sessions with Sarah and other resistance leaders. His knowledge of Kraxan patrol routes and supply lines was invaluable. One evening, as they watched twin moons rise over Haven, Jack turned to Zara with a serious expression. "You know," he said, "you don't have to stay involved in this fight. We defined you a safe, quiet world to settle down on. You've already been through hell." Zara was quiet for a moment, considering. Part of her longed for peace and safety, but a stronger part had been awakened by her experiences, a desire to make a difference. "No," she said finally. "I'm seeing this through. The Kraxans took everything from me. It's time to return the favor." Jack nodded, a mix of pride and concern on his face. "Just remember, you've got friends now. You're not alone in this." As if to emphasize his point, a group of Haven residents walked by, waving cheerfully to the pair. Humans and aliens, all united against a common foe. Zara felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't experienced in years. She wasn't just fighting against the Kraxans anymore. She was fighting for something, for freedom, for justice, and for the found family she discovered among the stars. As Haven's activity hummed around them, Zara allowed herself a moment of hope. With allies like these, perhaps they really did stand a chance against the Empire. Months passed as Haven's residents worked tirelessly to prepare for their boldest move yet. Zara's technology, combined with Jack's strategic knowledge, had given the Resistance a fighting chance against the Kraxan Empire. The plan was audacious. A series of coordinated strikes against key Kraxan installations, culminating in an attack on their primary shipyard. If successful, it would cripple the Empire's ability to project power across the galaxy. As the day of the operation approached, tension in Haven reached a fever pitch. Ships were prepped, weapons checked and rechecked. Zara found herself making last-minute adjustments to the propulsion systems, her hands steady despite the pressure. Jack appeared at her side, his usual grin replaced by a look of determination. "How we looking, Doc?" Zara gave a tired but satisfied nod. "The drives are operating at 110% efficiency. They're as ready as they'll ever be." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting over their months together. "You've done amazing work, Zara. Whatever happens out there, know that you've given us a real shot at this." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded away. There was so much Zara wanted to say, but before she could find the words, Sarah's voice crackled over the comms. "All personnel, report to your stations. Operation Firestorm commences in 30 minutes. The moment broken, Jack and Zara hurried to the Lucky Star. They had a critical role to play. Their ship would lead one of the strike teams into Kraxan Communications Hub. As Haven's Ractic fleet lifted off, Zara felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of countless worlds. The battle that followed was chaos incarnate. Haven's ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect synchronization, catching the Kraxans off guard. Zara's enhanced drives allowed them to dance between enemy vessels, striking with pinpoint accuracy before vanishing again. But the Kraxans were not unprepared. As the element of surprise faded, they began to rally. Casualties mounted on both sides as the space around the shipyard turned into a storm of energy weapons and explosions. "We're not making enough progress," Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "Their defenses are too strong. We need to abort before we lose everything." "Wait," Zara called out, an idea forming. "I think I can overload their main reactor. It'll take out the whole shipyard, but we'll be caught in the blast," Jack finished grimly. There was a moment of tense silence. Then Zara's voice, tight but resolute. "Do it. We might not get another shot at this." As the Lucky Star dove towards the shipyard's heart, Jack and Zara worked in perfect tandem. He weaved through increasingly dense fire, while she rerouted every scrap of power to the engines and weapons. "You know," Jack said, his voice strained as he pulled a tight turn, "when this is over, I was thinking maybe we could take a vacation. Somewhere with beaches. You like beaches, Zara?" Despite the dire situation, Zara felt a flutter in her heart. "I've never seen one," she admitted, "but I think I'd like to. With you." They shared a brief, bittersweet smile before focusing back on the task at hand. The shipyard loomed before them, a massive structure bristling with weapon emplacements. "Now or never, Doc," Jack said. Zara took a deep breath and activated the overload sequence. The Lucky Star's engines screamed as they pushed far beyond their limits. They streaked towards the shipyard's reactor, a comet of pure energy. At the last possible second, Jack wrenched the ship into a turn, narrowly avoiding a collision. The energy wake from their passage, however, struck the reactor dead-on. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a silent flash that outshone the stars, the shipyard began to break apart. "All ships, emergency jump now." Zara's voice cut through the chaos. As explosions bloomed around them, Haven's battered fleet vanished into hyperspace. They left behind an expanding ball of debris that had once been the pride of the Kraxan Navy. In the Lucky Star's cockpit, Jack and Zara clung to each other, battered but alive. As the adrenaline faded, the magnitude of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. "We did it," Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We really did it." Jack's answering laugh was equal parts joy and disbelief. "Yeah, we did. Guess that beach vacation is still on the table." As the Lucky Star limped back to Haven, Zara allowed herself to truly hope for the first time in years. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot, but they'd struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy. The Kraxan Empire was no longer invincible, and she, Zara, once a slave, was now a key part of the force that would bring them down. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them. Not alone, but with Jack at her side and the strength of Haven behind her. The future, for the first time in a long time, looked bright. The aftermath of Operation Firestorm sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The destruction of the Kraxan's primary shipyard had crippled their ability to project power, and news of their vulnerability spread rapidly. Worlds that had long suffered under Kraxan oppression began to rise up. The Empire's forces, stretched thin trying to maintain control, found themselves facing rebellion on multiple fronts. Back on Haven, the mood was one of cautious celebration tinged with grief for those lost in the battle. As the resistance regrouped and planned their next moves, Zara found herself at a crossroads. Her expertise was in high demand as more worlds joined the fight against the Kraxans. There were ships to upgrade, weapons to enhance, and new allies to train. Part of her thrilled at the chance to continue making a difference on such a large scale. But another part of her, a part that grew stronger each day, longed for something else. She found Jack on the outskirts of the settlement, watching the sunset. Without a word, she sat beside him, their shoulders touching. "Quite a view," Jack said softly. "Almost makes you forget there's a war on." Zara nodded, gathering her courage. "Jack, I've been thinking." He turned to her, his expression open and attentive. "Yeah. You mentioned a beach, before the battle. Did you mean it?" A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "Every word. I know a little planet out on the rim. Oceans as far as the eye can see. It's quiet, peaceful. The kind of place you could really," he paused, suddenly looking uncertain, "really build a life, you know." Zara's heart raced. "It sounds perfect," she said. But the fight's not over," Jack finished with a sigh. "I know. Believe me, I know." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge. "Maybe," Zara said slowly, "we don't have to choose. Not completely. Jack raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? We've done our part, Zara explained, her excitement growing. We've given the resistance the tools they need. But there are other ways to fight, aren't there? We could, I don't know, set up a workshop on your beach planet. Keep improving the tech, train others to use it. A rebel engineering school on a tropical paradise, Jack chuckled. Now that's an idea I can get behind. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. There were goodbyes to be said, supplies to gather, and endless discussions with Sarah about how to stay connected with the larger resistance. Finally, as Haven's second sun rose, the lucky star lifted off one last time. Jack and Zara stood at the viewport, watching the place that had become their home shrink into the distance. Having second thoughts, Jack asked softly. Zara shook her head. No, we've given them everything we can. It's time to find our own path. As the ship entered hyperspace, Zara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She thought back to her time as a prisoner of the Kraxans, how hopeless everything had seemed. Now, against all odds, she was free. More than that, she had found purpose, friendship, and even love among the stars. The journey to Jack's beach planet took several days. They spent the time planning for their new life, discussing everything from workshop layouts to teaching curricula. Their excitement grew with each passing hour. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, Zara's breath caught in her throat. The planet below was a jewel of blue and green, wispy white clouds swirling across its surface. Welcome home, Zara, Jack said softly. As they descended through the atmosphere, Zara pressed her face to the viewport, taking in every detail. Vast oceans stretched to the horizon, dotted with lush islands. On one larger landmass, she spotted a glittering strip of white sand, a beach, just as Jack had promised. They set the lucky star down on a bluff overlooking the ocean. As the engines powered down, Jack turned to Zara with a mix of hope and nervousness on his face. So, he said, what do you think? In response, Zara took his hand and led him down the boarding ramp. The air was warm and salty, a gentle breeze ruffling her head tendrils. She closed her eyes, savoring the moment. It's perfect, she said finally, turning to Jack with a radiant smile. It's everything I never knew I wanted. As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the waves crash against the shore, Zara felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The war wasn't over. It might not be for years. But here, on this peaceful world, she and Jack would do their part to ensure a free galaxy. And in between their work, their teaching, their quiet rebellion, they would build a life together. A life of purpose, of joy, and of love. Zara, once a slave, was now truly free. And her story, like the waves on the shore, was just beginning.